Hey, Jason Starr here, and the topic of today's video is write 1,000 words a day. This is extremely important because as a writer, and maybe different from just about every other profession, you have to be a self-starter. Nobody is forcing you to get up every day and write. It has to come from yourself. It has to be something you're passionate about. It has to be something you want to do. Ideally, it shouldn't seem like work. It should seem like, this is something you want to get into. You're excited to get back to your book every day. So this should come easy, but it's really important to have a word count. Now, I think 1,000 words is reasonable. That's usually about like 4 or so pages. But if that seems too ambitious for you, 500 words, maybe 250, I would stick to at least 500 to 1,000 words. You can go for 2,000, you can go higher. But the important thing is that you have a number that you're dedicated to, that you're going to stick to every day, no matter what. And look, you could have an extremely busy day, but you really need to carve time out, and it could just be, it could be on your commute if you commute by train. I don't even care if you're like writing this on your phone and sending it to yourself. There's opportunities during the day where you could work on your book, but if you have an extremely busy day and it's absolutely impossible to get to your word count, what I think is necessary to do is at least, and no one has any excuse not to do this, at least read through what you've done previously, especially that first chapter. Maybe make some little edits to it. You might want to have some notes for what you're going to write the next day. The important thing is, just as important as keeping to your word count, is to keep your head in the book. And this is why I like to have a word count, but even on a day when you can't hit it, at least you have your head in the book and you're keeping yourself motivated with the material. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but if there's been a time when you had to put your book aside for a couple of weeks, couple of months, even a couple of years, and you go back to it, it takes some time just to figure out what you're doing, get into the attitude of the characters, remember the voice, remember the rhythm, and that could slow you down and maybe even prevent you from finishing a book. So on those days when you can't hit your word count, it's really important to keep your head in the book, go back, read through what you've written, and at least you'll feel like psychologically, you'll feel like you're making some progress. But most of the time, there's really no excuse not to hit that word count. There have been times, I remember I was at a conference, a writer's conference, and there was a writer signing books at the next table, and when people weren't coming over to get their book signed, he had his laptop and he was working on his what I think he was probably working on his page count, on his word count for the day. So there's always like an opportunity to do that, and I found that the writers who finish books are the ones who are very dedicated to having a word count that they stick to. And one thing that might be helpful for this is on social media, or if you have a writing group, or just several friends, and on social media, it's really better to do it like in some private group setting. This isn't about getting attention for yourself or bragging about how many words you wrote for the day. But if you have a close group of friends, you might want to text them, hey, hit my 1,000 words today, just as a way to motivate yourself to do it. Almost the way if you joined a gym, you might work out with a friend to sort of keep yourself motivated. But that's the only social aspect that goes into this. In order to be a writer, the motivation has to ultimately come from yourself. And they say it takes 30 days to form a habit, and if it's been hard for you to stick to a word count, dedicate yourself to it, write that 1,000 words a day, and we'll begin to see progress. My books usually run about 90,000 to 120,000 words. Panic Attack was 120. I think The Follower was 120. Some of my books were a little leaner, like Twisted City or Cold Caller, but for a 90,000 word book, we're talking about 3 months. And when I say stick to this word count, I'm not. We're talking about a first draft, so you just want to get those words completed. You want that book to be moving forward every day. You're going to keep your head in the book on days you're not hitting the word count, but once you start to see that progress, it'll really motivate you to finish the book. Like the video, subscribe, recommend me to your friends on social media, and I'll be back soon with more tips.